Hello, this is Kitty Anderson, your board certified menopause coach. I'm going to teach you what your doctor never told you. HRT is natural. HRT is critical. And I'm going to teach you all about the functions of HRT. Here I am, age 67. I've been using HRT for 17 years. I've been exercising daily for 18 years. I've adopted a whole foods, nutrient-dense diet for the last 14 years. So this has put me in the best physical shape. I coach women to menopause recovery using a 15-point plan that optimizes the HRT. Our doctors just don't do this. We count and add nutrients, necessary supplements, and anti-inflammatories. What can you expect from HRT? How will you feel and how will you change?
So this entire section is hormone research highlights. So this I've accumulated over many years, probably the last 3 years, and most of the research is from the last 3 years. Some of it comes from hormone texts and others come from research papers. It's just a combination of things I've stockpiled over the years. Your takeaway from this is that HRT has very broad impact on your life. There are going to be about 100 different line items here that you can compare to what you're going through right now. And your takeaway is basically that hormones are important. I will add that this list of things doesn't exist anywhere in the known universe. I had to take lots of time to put this together, so I really hope you enjoy it. You might understand better the scope of hormones and their impact when you think of them as communication molecules. So they're really small, a trillionth of a gram in the bloodstream, so minute, but they kickstart a whole bunch of activities within your body. Here are your clues that all of your hormones are low. This really feels like a personality change. When you look at your life, you basically do not recognize yourself. You do not feel like yourself. You feel emotionally fragile. You doubt yourself. You're second-guessing all the time. You might have lost your intellectual life. Your family relationships are negatively impacted. Your social circle and your experiences are shrinking. So what kind of crazy things are happening when your estradiol is too low? This coming up slide may look a lot like your symptoms list. Can you believe all of this is reversible with hormones? Here are your clues that estradiol is too low. Frequent infections and parasites, especially intestinal, a bloated belly and food reactions, more doctor visits in general, never feeling rested and refreshed, having lower energy, lower motivation, hot flashes, and that's basically poor temperature regulation, having dry skin and losing your hair, wounds that heal slowly, and the numbers on your annual physical are worse. This sounds really bad, doesn't it? Remember that it's okay to go to your doctor in perimenopause before your cycles have stopped to create a safety net that keeps you from hitting rock bottom. And here are some whole body benefits, some things that basically get rescued when you add estradiol. This is going to look like a very long list of things, and it's a good thing that we do have estradiol as HRT. If you're comparing yourself to other women, you might have a big problem. You might be thinking they're going through exactly the same thing I am. But in reality, only about 25% of women will sail through menopause. The rest of us will really struggle. So estradiol acts as an antioxidant. You will hear this word a lot in the anti-aging circles. It's technical, so just know that this is powerful. It acts as a liver detox agent. We have so many toxins in our modern world, you might need hormones for this one issue. It's anti-inflammatory. Inflammation is common in chronic disease. It has a role in immune function and infection. We hit on this before. It will resolve the hot flashes 100%, and that helps with sleep. It will prevent blindness and tooth loss. This is more long-term, but boy, wouldn't it be nice to avoid it? It will affect your hair growth and improve that. It actually improves diet willpower. And this is the vanity button again. Yes, we are overly aware of our loss of youth and beauty. If this drives you to get HRT, have at it. No judgment here. But as a coach, I focus on feelings, not on how you look. It also improves sleep, both the quality and the quantity. This is such an issue. I will cover some science on sleep in an upcoming lesson. So this slide hits on both our inner and our outer beauty. If you don't do it for your skin, do it for your metabolics. It will improve both of them. So it improves skin elasticity, wound healing, and this comes from our friends in dermatology. They should be heavily involved in HRT and prescribing HRT, but our system gives the OBGYN the sole power to dole out the HRT. A little too much power in one set of hands, I think. Estradiol will have a positive effect on cholesterol, the LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. It improves all aspects of metabolics. It improves insulin sensitivity. It will enhance endothelial function, and that's the cells basically that are in your intestines and your lungs, but your intestines will actually absorb more nutrients. These last four issues actually beg the question of why our primary care doctor is not involved with our HRT. Well, obviously they should be. If your annual physical comes out badly, test your serum levels of estradiol. Now, who doesn't want to live longer? Well, the global consensus of menopause societies discovered that women who take HRT are 30% less likely to die in any given year. So for two women of the same age, one with HRT and one without, the one with HRT is 30% less likely to die. That is significant. The cardiovascular benefits are across all aspects of that system. However, we are just now seeing genetic differences that determine your HRT response. This is really neat. We are on our way to personalized medicine. We just aren't there yet. And diabetes? Well, if you remember Rhonda from the first lesson in this course, you will remember that she used diet and HRT to entirely reverse her diabetes. Here are some reasons why. Keep in mind that she used diet to magnify the results of the HRT. More on this in the lesson on nutrition. Well, now let's consider autoimmunity. HRT will help you avoid getting a new disease if you have autoimmune right now. There's a big question on whether or not COVID-19 infection will actually trigger a new autoimmune disease in the population, especially for those people who already have an autoimmune disease. If you have an autoimmune disease, you have some genetic predisposition to getting another autoimmune disease. This is something we just don't have an answer to right now. But HRT is going to help you create a buffer so that your genetics do not predispose you to a new autoimmune disease after a COVID-19 infection. This is really sad, and it's going to be something we'll have to look for, but there are many, many infections that trigger specific autoimmune diseases. This is something we're really aware of. We know that estradiol will reduce infection that does trigger autoimmunity. We know it reduces multiple sclerosis disease activity, especially relapses. It benefits psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, and alopecia. Estradiol protects against additional autoimmune disease and/or more severe organ damage. Estradiol reduces parasites that in turn trigger autoimmune disease. We know that sex hormone suppression leads to new disease, so HRT should really help us here. We know that estradiol detoxes toxins that also can trigger autoimmunity. So this slide that's coming covers cancer. Unfortunately, there are still rumors around some research that was completed in 2002. That study was called the WHI study, and in that study, they found a higher rate of breast cancer. And that was kind of the news that went around the planet and actually caused a lot of doctors to hesitate in getting HRT to their patients. Well, it turns out that the women in that study were often decades past menopause. So breast cancer cells had had 10 or more years, sometimes 20 years, to grow without being checked by estradiol. So these women were also on the overweight to obese side because they were so far beyond menopause. It's a natural reaction of the body to seek to gain weight because the fat cells actually create a kind of estrogen to compensate for your loss of estradiol. So this old study caused a lot of people to go without HRT. And the most recent research is actually saying the opposite. If you get HRT during the window of opportunity right around menopause, you're preventing cancer. You're preventing colon cancer and you're preventing breast cancer. There are lower rates of breast cancer. Osteoporosis is scary because women become fragile with it. They break a hip, get hospitalized, and then they die from that event. So to prevent it, we need estradiol at a high enough level to keep our bones from losing minerals and weakening. You can imagine how HRT and diet are major inputs to this prevention. We know that estradiol in HRT prevents osteoporosis. Hip fractures are down by 34%. Vertebral fractures are down by 37%. Look at these fracture numbers. Imagine how much fewer with proper nutrition plus HRT. And the prevention of all fractures is down 50%. Let's press the vanity button again. Without estradiol, we get boxy or stick-like. Our faces lose the padding and skin sags. Ah well, no judgment, but if you find yourself wondering where the old you went, this might motivate you to get HRT. Normally, we don't talk about how we pee or how we can't control it or how it controls us. It would be a shame if you stopped traveling and vacationing due to low estradiol. This is one of the easiest things to control, and it could be an indicator that you need a higher dose. Don't adjust your life, adjust your dose. Here's another situation where there are plenty of drugs that your doctor might prescribe when actually estradiol is all you need. Estradiol prevents all the urination problems. It strengthens tissue, reduces the frequency of urination, reduces incontinence, and reduces the urgency. Okay, now let's switch gears a bit and talk about mental health. I have 4 big slides for you on mental health. Estradiol is so tightly linked that you don't even need to question, is my mental health going to be affected by HRT? These two things go together, and in fact, for many of the mental health issues I'm going to cover, HRT is a kind of a rescue. And in other countries, HRT is used more frequently than the psychiatric medications. If you have had a lifetime of cycling, having a menses, you know your emotional health is linked to your hormone level. If you've ever had so much stress that your period has been suppressed, that shows that your hormones are also being suppressed. So if you've ever had a delay or skipped a month of your period, you have experienced what happens when you have stress. HRT can really help counterbalance those stress issues. So we've got a few slides to move through here. I will just hit on the highlights. Much of my research is in this space because my mom became a shut-in at menopause and had some major issues. I was too young and innocent to save my mother, although I tried. I am absolutely driven to understand this. For you, it might not be so dire. I wanted to save myself from what my mother went through. This might be motivating you too. So into the details on this slide. What you might be thinking when your estradiol is just too darn low. You might feel emotional when life ain't that hard. Your moods are swinging. Your relationships are suffering. I won't get into the divorce rate in perimenopause or menopause, but there is a definite misalignment with our partners because we destabilize. You might have an unusual and poor work evaluation. This might be your first ever serious conflict with your boss. That's a signal. You don't tolerate others well. You dismiss them. Yes, I know. At this point, you have rebellious teens, and they are affecting you too. But if you find yourself withdrawing or overreacting or unable to generate positivity, consider your estradiol level. You might have a new psych diagnosis. Yep. Lucky us, you can have panic attacks after a life of panic-free living. You might feel driven to eat. This is the body's compensation. It wants to fatten up to replace the ovary estradiol and the skin and the fat cell estrogen. You will build, but in a new kind of way. You might even have suicidal thoughts. Use the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. 25% of menopausal women will have these thoughts, most for the first time ever. It is a shocking experience. Please use the national hotline if this is happening to you. They won't recommend HRT, of course. Our world works in silos. But they could get you a counselor that can really make a difference as you transition. For me, I would say I had desperate thoughts. I was overexcitable, over-anxious, just not responding to life appropriately. That was gone a few weeks into the right dose of HRT. Okay, here are the heavy hitters in mental health. I love the depression statistic here, and this number is recent. It could be that diet also shows this same type of decrease in depression when a whole food diet is adopted. And we were late getting to this type of reduction number because we didn't factor diet into previous studies, right? Psychologists and psychiatrists are just now getting into this. The first meeting of the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research was in 2017. Crazy, huh? We are late to the game because we just try to study one thing when people are living in a world where everything affects everything. So estradiol reduces anxiety, resolves depression, down 48% over a placebo, improves feelings of social isolation, reduces OCD, repetitive symptoms. Take note of the OCD here. The clients that see this recognize that they started collecting things. They made repetitive purchases. HRT will really save you money here when this symptom is relieved. Another OCD-related behavior is fear of contamination. If you feel you are overreacting and overcleaning for fear of contamination, it could be low estradiol. It also improves disordered eating. Estradiol controls your meal frequency and the size of your meals. If you have enough estradiol, you will not use food as a reward. I've mentioned how HRT drives our relationship with food. It's noted here too. This slide is full of interesting and surprising connections. You can expect HRT to go a long way towards resolving these, and I felt a distinct difference between the low-dose HRT and the high-dose HRT. Estradiol resolves dissociative feelings like detachment, emptiness, a loss of perspective, feeling like you're out of yourself. It eliminates mood swings, maintains emotional stability and centeredness. It resolves issues of attention, issues with a noisy environment, and better multitasking. Honestly, I've had many clients talk about the noise in the environment. Things that used to bother them, or used to not bother them rather, suddenly are just unbearable. Let's talk a little bit about anatomy and our hormone system. These two things are really tightly connected. So estradiol is basically priming your brain, it's coating your brain with hormones to make all the other hormones within the brain work. One of the areas of the brain that may be impacted by low estradiol is the pituitary gland. Now this thing is tiny, it is the size of a pea, and it is very easily damaged, so it might be under functioning as well. It generates a whole slew of hormones for us, so you might find other hormones low if estradiol is low. One of the hormones from there is prolactin, and prolactin is also a social and bonding hormone. So you can see how estradiol connects through prolactin to generate emotions and your behavior. Prolactin also functions to balance the immune system. So you can see how your social life and social experiences also impact your immune system. I have an entire lesson on this to come. I put the stress response on this slide, but let's cover that also in a later session. I added thyroid response to estradiol because most of us know that our body runs well with that. And lastly, higher estradiol leads to higher oxytocin. Oxytocin releases through all positive social behaviors, but it also makes us have better, stronger mental health. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about two very serious conditions, schizophrenia and anorexia. Both of these can have menopausal onset. So you might have gone your entire life without having any of these issues, and suddenly you have massive mental health issues. In some countries, they use HRT to resolve these types of things. Can you imagine hearing voices, having an onset of schizophrenia, and then having your HRT totally resolve that symptom? In our country, a lot of times, we end up giving the patient a sedating drug, so something that really slows them down and takes some of the life out of life, and whereas HRT does not have those types of side effects. In the case of anorexia, you can use estradiol. It might take up to 12 months to counterbalance that, but it can get the person on a good path so that they can add the cognitive behavioral therapy and recover fully. So now you might be asking, why cover the brain here separately from mental health? Well, this is more about cognition and some of the background science that supports both thinking and mental health. You might like this if you are the research type. I will just highlight the stuff that everyone can relate to. I don't think you want to think these things are just aging. These things happen because of low hormones. You can reverse a lot of these effects with HRT. The number one cognitive complaint in menopause is called word finding. We just can't think of the right words, or we say the wrong word for something. These errors stand out to us and our loved ones. Well, it's reversible. Consider also these other things. You might have trouble doing math in your head, like calculating a tip at a restaurant. You might take wrong turns constantly because you're distracted. This can cost you your first traffic ticket. You might have trouble making lists and prioritizing. I had one client that couldn't even write horizontally on paper. Words were all willy-nilly and angled on the page. This was reversed, of course. She also found herself deep into a multi-level marketing scheme with essential oils. Before HRT, this was a great source of irritation to her. A little HRT and she wiggled out of that problem too. You might have trouble learning new tasks. You probably will avoid new tasks until you have HRT. You might not enjoy music as much. Once you were dancing, now you are not. You might have more repetitive negative thoughts. This is the OCD again, but problems thinking mean even cognitive behavioral therapy isn't working. You might save money on psychology if you can resolve your hormone problem. This slide details out all the small ways that estradiol specifically improves your mind. Who wouldn't want these benefits? Estradiol is actually the brain's architect, designing structure and function, choosing materials, and then making it all work on a day-to-day basis. Estradiol is a brain superpower. You will feel some of this in just a few short weeks on the right dose. We talked before about the Alzheimer's risk, but it's worth repeating here. Alzheimer's seems a long way off, but today we are seeing people with dementia and impairment in their 50s. If you are having this kind of trouble now, there is hope. Now let's switch gears to progesterone. This is a sister molecule to estradiol. You need to pair them up if you want to avoid any buildup of the uterine lining. Your doctor can tell you more about this. But progesterone does so much more. I have found a number of reasons to keep it in my life. This slide is a list of signs you could look for to determine your progesterone load. This hormone is less frequently tested, and there is such a wide range of normal in the female body. It's hard to overdose, but it's easy to underdose. When progesterone is low, you may have anxiety with no real visible cause. You might have facial ridges, frown lines, a very tense face. You might have shallow breathing. You might have muscles that don't relax after exercise. This is a hormone that will make you feel good in about 10 minutes. It is a joyful hormone, a happy, a calm hormone. It can definitely get you ready for sleep. It relaxes your muscles, including those deep lines on your face. In addition, it plays a role in brain cell insulation and the structure of the entire cerebellum, where we get some of our balance and emotional intelligence. Progesterone is anti-inflammatory. That's always good for chronic disease and infection. Here is another set of things progesterone helps with. So many elements of health. Pause here if you want to know more. It'll help you battle infection. There's a COVID-19 clinical trial. Prevent endometriosis. It is heart protective. It improves brain health, especially cognition. It enhances sleep. You always take your dose at night. There's a final slide on progesterone. Such a cool hormone. I've added some ways that it is neutral on health, like being weight neutral. So if you are wondering why you might be gaining weight, it is likely not the progesterone. Look for low estradiol and maybe low thyroid levels. Progesterone even works well on brain-destructive diseases like Parkinson's. You may even notice a difference with your ability to remember visual things like maps when your progesterone is sufficient. Let's not leave out testosterone. Although many doctors do leave out testosterone when you request HRT. You have to request a test in order for you to get it. Women have less testosterone than men, but it still plays a very significant role in the body. First, let's cover the signs if testosterone is too low. You have no desire for sex. You have no attraction to your typical partner types. Low motivation, low positivity. Overall body pain may increase. You might be feeling antisocial, seeking isolation. It might be linked to depression. It makes it really hard to build muscle. You might even see your muscles getting more floppy. And how do we solve those problems and more? Look at how testosterone, or T, makes us dance. There's some vitality here. For those of us worried about menopause and infection, the T is critical. It is a factor in the development of immune cells that fight infection, so a little goes a long way. It also comes in transdermal gel or cream, which bypasses the digestive system and is superior to other forms. Watch out for the dangerous pellets that are high in testosterone. This slide shows how T becomes the hero of the immune system. It is basically a treatment for every age and both sexes. Parasites, reducing damage of autoantibodies. Who wants to live without that? The scary thing is, as a woman, you can test at 0. Imagine how that affects you without HRT. Testosterone is so tightly tied to feelings. It boosts our motivation and our confidence. Men get a boost of testosterone when they anticipate a competition, and they get a 4-fold increase in testosterone if they win that competition. I think all of us women have seen this happen, so we really get it. Testosterone helps you be social. It is basically a driver of our social being. So women have a lot less testosterone than men, but it still is very significant and has such an important impact on our feelings. Specifically, you might feel the following changes. Boost your mood, confidence, resilience. You'll start seeking social connections. Motivation comes easily. Change comes easily. You'll have higher energy and better focus. So muscle health and sexual health are tightly tied together. You can actually apply your testosterone HRT close to the genitals and blood flow and sensations will improve. This happens in seconds. You can't miss it. Testosterone can also improve your pain from chronic illness, and you bet that will improve your sexual health. A caution here is that you might feel so good when you apply testosterone that you just keep applying it. It's kind of addicting, but not really. Once you're aware of this, just hold back to your regular dosing once or twice a day and get your levels checked to be sure you're not out of the normal range. Now, I've added Pregnenolone even though that is not normally considered part of HRT. For me, it was helpful and it is often used in anti-aging circles and mental health. It could be that this deficiency could be resolved if our estradiol products were at an even higher dose. I often wonder if we're getting enough estradiol even with HRT. I would just say I added this when I was under intense stress and found such relief that I kept it in my routine. This may or may not help you. I'm including the research here mostly because I found it in treatments for mental health, pain, and for arthritis. Your pregnenolone might be low if you're having attention issues, mood swings, painful joints. This was once the only therapy for rheumatoid arthritis. You might need it if you're feeling less social, anxious, insensitive, and distant. And here is what the research says. Some of this happens as low as 5 to 10 milligrams, and other effects are all the way up at 500 milligrams. So here again, your individuality might be important. I am not diagnosing or prescribing. This is really all up to you. It will improve cognition, enhance your visual perception, enhance brain cell growth and health. It actually protects against an Alzheimer's protein that resides in the brain. It'll boost your positive mood. It has even been used on serious conditions like bipolar and schizophrenia. It improves all of your social behaviors. It's an anti-anxiety. It resolves mood swings, increases your empathy and emotional regulation, and eases pain. In fact, all hormones are really helpful there. It is a whole body anti-inflammatory. So now you might be thinking, do hormone levels control me or do I control my hormone levels? That's a really good question. Hormone levels make it more likely that you'll have certain behaviors, but you are still really in control and you are really still responding to your environment. You still have free choice. You still make decisions and you pull the trigger on your behavior. Another thing that is interesting is how life affects your hormone levels. Here are a few that have really stuck with me over the years. Estradiol is boosted in an enriched environment. Now this is fascinating. I sometimes wonder if my life had been easier or more enriched if I could have gone without HRT at menopause. My gut says no, mostly because I can compare myself now to other women without HRT or even with the wrong HRT, and I see a difference in cognitive skills. That seems to be the most telling issue. You can get bone health and avoid osteoporosis at a low hormone level, but you can't keep cognitive skills sharp on those low-dose products. Social experiences boost the bonding hormone oxytocin. Here's where social experiences can actually create an oxytocin high. This is missing to a great degree during the pandemic. We have to create these fun interactions to keep this feeling alive. We know that stress suppresses our sex hormones. I've got a lot to say about stress in another lesson, but I need to put it here so that you can touch on it in the context of hormones. Stress is a killer, and loneliness is a killer. We are all experiencing this now more than ever. Putting together self-care goals should really be front and center now. How much will all this cost you? Well, with insurance, I pay about $2 to $3 a day. And prices are falling as products become generic and insurance companies begin to see these as low toxicity solutions. My recent annual visit was $70 with an $80 copay for testing. I have been able to adjust the dose just sending an email to my doctor through a secure portal, so no expenses there. Now, you may still have to fight a partner or a family member for the money, but I bet you have done that before. Here is a funny insight into the money issue. When you get HRT, you don't end up gaining weight, so you never have to pay the personal trainer $50 to $75 an hour to change your body shape. When you get HRT, it will relax your muscles, including your face muscles, and you'll never be tempted to actually take the Botox, which is about $400 a session, and it only lasts for 3 or 4 months. Because you'll feel so emotionally healthy, you will be able to keep your job. So take that future income and multiply it by 40 years. You're really going to save money here. I am also using an inexpensive conventional OBGYN for my hormone prescription. There are more other expensive options out there when it comes to finding someone to write a prescription. They exist because our OBGYNs are not doing a great job with us. Many OBGYNs are denying HRT to patients and must be convinced that it is safe. And yet they are not up on the research. The functional pharmacies are fairly common across the United States as they sell products outside the FDA-approved lines. Please see our lesson on finding a doctor to learn more about this. Going the unconventional route will cost you hundreds of dollars more each year, and most people who start with these kinds of doctors end up transitioning over to an OBGYN in time. Only 15% of women using HRT in their later years are using an unconventional provider. The happy users, the longtime users, are using an OBGYN. Here are some examples of 16 estradiol products at the FDA website. You can look up the details about any of the hormone supplements and learn the expected maximum blood levels and the average blood levels. A reproductive age woman rarely goes below 80 picograms per ml, so you want to be up there. Only a few of these products hit those goals. Notice there is a lot of variability in the patches. They might have been tested directly after manufacturing, so you want to actually test your blood levels. Make sure you aren't using expired products. Sometimes the pharmacy is carrying old stock. So what does toxicity look like? What does an overdose look like? Well, let me first say that anything, even water, can be toxic in a high amount. Just remember that the female body can handle estrogens in pregnancy near 7,000, and you are shooting for above 80 picograms per ml. So you are an amazing human. These are not toxic levels of product. The patches alone are very controlled. However, if you have estrogen levels that are not balanced by progesterone, you could have these issues. You know if you feel denser breast tissue that it is unbalanced. Uterine bleeding usually means the same thing. A talk with your doctor here would be appropriate. Dosing down will also often immediately reverse these symptoms. You may not need to discontinue HRT. At this point, I'm going to speak about breast cancer, and I am not an expert on this. I know that the doctors will definitely balk if you have had previous breast cancer. I personally have had 2 friends with breast cancer, and they both struggled getting HRT. But the research right now is supporting the use of HRT as long as you are in the menopausal window, as long as you have stopped having periods in the last 12 months. But estradiol, that little picogram, that little trillionth of a gram, is not really the main driver of cancer. Cancer is really affected by a sedentary lifestyle, by poor nutrition, and by sugar. Sugar just feeds the cancer and causes proliferation. So really, estradiol is just a small player in this whole bouquet of things involved in cancer. So if you had a previous cancer diagnosis, you may actually be able to find a progressive doctor who will give you enough HRT to support you without kickstarting any cancer cells. Apparently, progesterone can make some people feel foggy-headed or depressed. I experienced this only on oral products, but not since I moved to transdermal. Transdermal doesn't pass through the liver and get changed to other forms. It comes into your system slowly, not in a big chunk like oral or even vaginal products. There's a problem progestin called MPA that was used in some studies that saw an increase in stroke and breast cancer. In 2018, they linked MPA to a 50% increase in stroke risk. That's huge. And my new doctor this year just prescribed it to me the summer of 2020. These doctors just can't keep up. So how about testosterone and toxicity? You can see the list here, and it's everything that you would expect. Acne, deepening of your voice, strange hairs growing in strange places. It is exactly what you would expect. I, of course, have had none of these problems. My problem is tendency to underdose, and one time I was actually using expired product and my pain came back immediately, so I was able to figure that one out. But usually underdosing is the problem. We just tend to be a little conservative with it. So all these things could happen, and you could just dose down. This hasn't ruined you forever if you have toxicity. Change the dose and you change the symptoms. Here again is where a testosterone pellet is bad. If it leaks or if its dose is just too high for you, you let it sit for 3 months while it wears out. The doctor will not remove it. Also, if testosterone overwhelms your estradiol, you will have immune issues from a shrunken thymus gland. So an overdose is pretty simple. Watch your dose and test your blood levels if you have concerns. Now let's rest here. That is so much to absorb. You don't need to memorize this. I hope I didn't overload you. It's my way of letting you know simply that hormones are important. Hormones protect you. Your relationships are dependent on hormones. So let's consider your life now. Your life is all that matters. Consider answering these next questions to get the focus back on you and your possible action plan. Coaching questions. How does working on HRT support your life goals?
How does working on HRT support your relationships? How will HRT support likely affect your chronic disease? What remaining questions do you have about HRT? What could you do in the next 24 hours to move forward? What 5 key things have you learned? What 5 key actions will be pursued because of your learning? What strategies are new to you as a result of your learning? How will your learning today save time in the future? How will your learning today save money in the future?
So here is what we call the sobering statistics. This is all sad. This is why I marvel whenever anyone says menopause is natural. In our world where toxins and stress alone may be suppressing our hormones to dangerously low levels, it seems only natural to get HRT. Then we throw a pandemic on top of it all, and we want to be ready for that infection. What real choices do we have? So as I've said before, 25% of us will have suicidal thoughts as the result of low hormones. Most of us will have incredible negativity from hormone loss. It's unbearable. That's not what we want for the second half of life. Suffering is optional. 1 in 10 menopausal women will lose their job. That's crazy. Right when wisdom is peaking, we lose ground because of low hormones. Luckily, we can turn this around. 80% will have symptoms lasting for an average of 11 years. That's too long to say that this is just a temporary phase. This is a true disability. Who needs that? And since we have all turned our lives upside down for COVID, HRT is the one thing we can get done in a few weeks that will decrease our risks, help us avoid hospitalization and the injury and bills that come from that. I hear the hospitals can even come after your home equity now. Yes, they are less likely to forgive hospital bills based on income. And lastly, your overall cost for healthcare will go down if you invest in needed HRT support today. So much is riding on hormone health. How will you move forward in your healing experiment? In closing, I do want to remind you that everything affects everything, that all of your actions in lifestyle medicine will move you forward into healing. There is interaction between your hormones and your baseline health. So anything that you can do to promote that baseline health, even the small steps will count and make your HRT work better. You are still natural if you have HRT. You are not less than. Is it time for your healing experiment? I have more lessons on how healing relationships, nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management, toxin and pharmaceutical reduction all come together to make for a full menopause recovery. I've been able to recover to 100%. My wish is that you will too. If you would like ongoing support beyond this course, consider joining our membership community. This one was designed with you in mind. I have taken my professional training as a coach and created a group coaching space focused on your needs during your transition. You will be part of a cohort of women making change for the better.
Once again, if you'd like to build your own personal plan for menopause recovery, email jumpstartaip@gmail.com and we work it out in coaching. This is a 3-month contract where I work for you exclusively. Please share. Let's help others. Most women do not know that HRT is an identical molecule that you can put back into your body and feel perfectly normal. Let's help our sisters.